I begin with an X-ray of Homer as a metaphor between his empty head and our current knowledge of how the brain works. What we know about how the brain works, in my opinion, parallels astrophysics and its understanding of the universe. While physicists are still looking for the missing 90% of the universe's matter, dark matter, neuroscientists have yet to seriously consider glial cells, which are capable of information processing and make up more than 90% of the brain. Second, there is a certain irony in the success of The Simpsons. Is its success due to the similarity between its characters and its viewers? Does The Simpsons accurately reflect Western democratic capitalist societies of today? Are all of life's issues potential comedies rather than tragedies? Or are there issues The Simpsons don't talk about, and why might this be? The third irony is, of course, the name Homer. Do The Simpsons represent today's epic poetry? If we zoom in on Homer's X-ray, the parallel between neuroscience and astrophysics becomes more evident. We can see stars much like we can see neurons. Eventually, we find the space explorers, the scientists with their probes, searching Homer's head for the meaning of life. On board the Enterprise, not only is there the most incredible technological gadgets, but also some of the greatest minds that have ever evolved. Combined, the passion, love, and empathy of Captain Kirk and the logic and computational power of Mr. Spock formed the perfect tool to boldly go where no man or Vulcan has gone before. But of course, we all know that their real objective was to seek and destroy life forms that were of real or imagined threat to human or Vulcan existence. Of the technology on board, there is the famous transporter, which itself poses a serious theological problem of transporting a non-material soul. But the most important piece of equipment for the crew's survival was the replicator. The replicator worked by rearranging subatomic particles to form molecules and by arranging these molecules to form an object. For example, to create a pork chop, the replicator would first form atoms of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, etc., and then arrange these into amino acids, proteins, and cells, and then put it all together in the form of a pork chop. In other words, the replicator took the waste matter, bits of food, garbage, dead bodies, and so on, and rearranged the subatomic particles of these to create anything that was needed: fresh food, new tools, parts, and so on. Having the replicator so small is a pity, for if it were big enough, it might have been able to suck in the old universe and spit out a new and improved one. Of course, this is not really possible. The Enterprise can be likened to Earth, as the Earth too recycles products and travels through space at a leisurely pace of about 1/10,000th of the Enterprise's warp speed 1, which is the speed of light. After Captain Kirk died, it was only a matter of time before the Starship crew lost hope in the mission and decided to head back to Earth to change crew and update their ship. Sadly, however, when they returned to Earth, they found it had been taken over by a single bacteria known as Dianochus radioactivus. As the atmosphere disappeared, the Earth became exposed to incoming radiation from the Sun, and this wiped out all forms of life except for Dianochus radiodurans, also known as Conan the bacterium. As shown here, Conan can withstand 10,000 times the amount of radiation that could kill a human being. Conan is an extremophilic bacterium and is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's toughest bacterium. It can withstand extreme heats and freezing temperatures and is currently being genetically engineered to clean up the heavy metal mercury and the toxic solvent toluene. But will Conan go where no bacteria has gone before? NASA plans to re-engineer Conan to help astronauts live on Mars. According to NASA scientists, it could be used to recycle wastes and produce clean water and oxygen, that is, become a replicator. It might even be used one day to terraform Mars or transform Mars into a habitable place like Earth. Like all species of organism that have access to unlimited resources, the number of Conans grows exponentially over time. The problem for all species is, however, that without replicators, resources in their usable state are limited. If all species invented replicators, all species would turn matter into usable resources and survive unchanged indefinitely. Land-dwelling organisms would turn the water into land, and water-dwelling creatures would turn land into water, and so on. Then there would be a race by all organisms to try and turn everything else into something useful. So, since we are the most likely to ever invent a replicator, we should make sure we prevent any other organism from making one. Otherwise, we might end up being transformed into something useful for some other life form, i.e. War of the Worlds. Now, evolution in a Petri dish. Take one genetically identical species of bacteria and drop it into 5 places on the dish. Watch them grow and change over time. The goal is to consume as much jelly as possible. In time, each colony develops their own ways of consuming more. Through random mutations, some consume more and reproduce more. Some improvements are more successful than others. As the colonies spread, they interact, and this can lead to rapid increase in beneficial and harmful mutations. We can then map this history out as a tree, much like the standard evolution tree. As more time passes, we see one group appear and dominate, as it utilizes genetic traits of many other groups to increase their consumption, until it spreads and covers the entire dish. And there is a period of peace on the Petri dish. If we zoom in on the Petri dish, we can see bacteria all neatly arranged for maximal survival, not too unlike our own suburban sprawls. But then the older groups begin to run out of jelly, as it has been used up more by the generations that have lived there. In time, we see more and more jelly disappearing. If we zoom in on the edges of these groups, we find fierce competition for the remaining resources, and this again leads to new groups forming. New groups that are better able to survive on less appear. These groups are recycling, reducing their waste products, increasing their energy efficiency, and so on. In time, these techniques are incorporated by rocket scientists for long-haul missions and colonies on other planets. And a select crew of the most intelligent and powerful human beings are sent into space, just as life on Earth almost disappears completely. Of course, the alternative is that we replace ourselves with artificial intelligence, and both neuroscientists and engineers are working fervently to realize this potential. And perhaps robots will be introduced much like computers once were, supposedly allowing us to have more free time to pursue leisure activity and to think. Or perhaps they will be introduced, as in the classic movie Metropolis, as a way of convincing us to keep working. Which brings me to Everyone. Everyone, whose name was probably no accident, sounding like everyone, may solve our problem of unfriendly salespeople. Poor people who are more often than not seem to be having bad days these days. Everyone may eventually sell us everything we need. And it is also probably no coincidence that the first human-like robots are female, given the similarity between everyone and these Japanese sex dolls. Finally, perhaps David, the mechanical boy in the movie AI, made to love a childless mother, exemplifies the struggle we all have in wanting to be real. Perhaps our pursuit of a better life is like David's Pinocchio dream of being made real by the blue fairy. Except for those select few who will likely get seats in the spaceship, perhaps it's best believing in a fantasy reality where everyone is born equal and where we all have the same chance of survival on this Petri dish called Earth.